I wonder who in my audience are Christian and who are American, because this next topic is going to dive into that in a nuanced way. So a lot of conservative and evangelical Christians, I am an evangelical Christian, however, I don't subscribe to this. A lot of them will talk about how America is a Christian nation. Now, if you understand what Christianity is, what it involves, what it entails, you clearly understand that this is not a Christian nation, okay? Not at all. We are deep in sin, debauchery, degeneracy, and we love it. So, in no way can it be considered now. But the argument that they give is to say that this country was founded as a Christian nation, and I argue that that's false. It was not founded as a Christian nation, so all of the founding documents of this country, whether you go back to the Articles of Confederation, pre-Constitution, or the Constitution itself, the Declaration of Independence, etc., they have really nothing to do with Christianity in terms of spelling out the, say, core doctrines of the faith. Now, there is an allusion to a kind of supernatural power, if you will, some kind of deity, some divine providence, as George Washington had stated. But in nowhere in those founding documents do we see Christianity being espoused and proclaimed in any way. And so another thing that's also important to realize is that the founding fathers, the number is about 52 of them, around that many. But the main founding fathers, of course, that authored these documents, the names of, say, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, the people that had real influence in shaping the new government of the U.S., they weren't really Christian, not in any sense. If anything, they were maybe lapsed Christians. A lot of atheists will use the argument and say they were deists. I don't believe that. Perhaps only two of them were deists. Thomas Paine, who wrote in the Age of Reason about his deism, and then Benjamin Franklin. That's about it. The rest were not deists. They were more or less lapsed Christians. Episcopalians from the Church of England, the Anglican Church, they made very indirect reference to God in some cases. George Washington did as well, very indirect. Whether they were truly devout men, their letters seem to indicate a little bit otherwise. And for example, one of my favorite founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, he created the Jefferson Bible, which is basically an annotated version of the New Testament, of the Gospels. It's the life and teachings, the morals and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. That's all it is, just the morals and teachings. He removed any reference to divinity. He removed the miracles. He removed the salvific emphasis within the Gospels. So how would a Christian do that? They wouldn't. They would elevate Jesus. And so Thomas Jefferson did not that. Just a good teacher, good moral teacher. That's all Jesus was, according to him. So these men were deeply influenced and shaped by the Enlightenment period, which they were living in at the time, in the 18th century, and naturalism, natural philosophy, natural religion, the natural world, if you will, and gleaning your understanding about God, the afterlife, divine providence, if you will, from the natural world. So no, I don't believe for a second, and it's the far right within Christianity that do this, unfortunately, because they give people on the right a bad name, you could say. It's almost like flat earthers. So I do not believe this country was founded as a Christian nation. Now, this country has had at least 3 great awakenings or revivals. One that predated the founding in the early 18th century, and then you had another one in the early to mid 19th century, and then one later on in that century. There were revivals of the people. But to those that say this country was founded as a Christian nation, the onus is on you to prove within the framework of our government, the Constitution, these founding documents, that Christianity is somehow embedded, intertwined, and connected to the government, and it's not. Separation of church and state is an obvious example of that. The letter that Jefferson wrote to the Danbury, Connecticut Baptist congregation. Now, that wasn't so much policy at the time, but he wrote it and spelled out the need for that separation of church and state. And I'm arguing as a Christian and as a conservative, socially and politically conservative. And I just get tired of these conservative Christians who don't want to do their homework, or they want to, say, make interpolations and project onto the documents or onto the founders what they, what they thought. When indeed, when you analyze their writings, you scrutinize their own testimonies, yeah, only very few were deists. Most were just lapsed Christians who didn't really find much favor with going to church and honoring and worshiping God than worshiping the moon. So they weren't that rigorous in their faith or demanding of their faith or demanding that of other people in colonial America and then post-colonial America. So that's all for now.